Well, good afternoon. Happy Monday, everybody. I do realize this is the worst time, according to YouTube, for my audience to catch me live, but that's okay. It was kind of on a whim, given my schedule today, what I would do. I wanted to talk about some important concepts here, actually, really important ones that have been really popular on my channel. In fact, that hasn't been talked about too much to this degree anywhere else. And it was inspired by a YouTube commentary. I haven't responded to the comment, but what I'll do is I'll reply with this video so he'll see a video response. So sometimes when you guys have questions and things, and if I'm able to, and I see the need, like the specific need for it, and if I can fit it in with my schedule, I'll answer those questions for you guys. All right. And maybe a video or something like that. Some people do paid video sponsorships too. That's a thing. And then a lot of times what I do is these questions and different things that come up, I talk about them in my newsletter. So if you go to the link in the description, it's free. It's a newsletter. I write a few things a week, almost like a blog post, where I talk about a lot of these concepts in a briefer format, although this will be longer explanation a little bit than what my newsletter usually is. And it's good. A lot of people get their questions answered, and it keeps you in touch with announcements and things like that from me and what I'm doing. But it really keeps you in line and in touch with anything intergender dynamics, mindset, inner game, regular game, seduction, frame, all that stuff. A lot of good suggestions there in that newsletter. So I don't plug it enough. It's free. Just, it's my gift to you guys. Just click that link and get on it at some point, maybe after the video. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the concept of alpha widowing. We're going to talk the concept of cucking, what I mean by that, and why this is exclusively something that women do in terms of cucking, and alpha widowing is something that exclusively women are susceptible to and not men. Okay, this is not a male thing. Now, you first have to understand that equality doesn't exist, okay, not in the sexual marketplace, probably not anywhere, all right? And even fairness is suspect, okay? We evolve differently, men and women have. Men and women are fundamentally different in how our minds and brains are wired and for the way that our sexual strategy is. So you have to understand it's not me putting one person or one gender above another gender. It has nothing to do with that, but there isn't this blank slate equalism. So just because women do something or have some benefit or disadvantage, it doesn't mean that men have some equal and opposite benefit or disadvantage or have the same benefit or disadvantage. There's simply differences, okay? And so we need to recognize that there's this tendency to want to make things fair, and in our minds wanting to make things fair, people tend to fall to this idea that, well, if guys do that, then women must do it too, or vice versa. And you see that more from females, more from women. It's an interesting thing. It's just the instinctual way that women see fairness and see, women, the way that women think. They've done a lot of studies on this. Is just women tend to want fairness to mean, that you treat others the way that others would treat you, and that you are seen as much value as someone else does. And like that things are the same, right? That's the idea of fairness from a woman's perspective. And oftentimes respect even in relationships is tied into that. It's not for better or for worse. It just is that idea, but that doesn't always ring true. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't. Okay. Sometimes there's just differences and there is no fairness in it. Okay. So alpha widowing is strictly a woman thing. Now I'll explain what guys do that's different and why it's different, but that's strictly something that women can become, all right, is an alpha widow. It's not something a man can become, and I'll explain why. And also that gets into cucking as well. We'll get into that later in the video. So again, the guy was asking about, well, what's a male alpha widow called, right? There is no such thing as a male alpha widow, okay? This is distinctly a female phenomenon. All right. And so to understand this, you have to understand how men and women are distinctly different in their mating strategies and drives. All right. So, although there is no comprehensive theory of human mating, what we find are these two generalities. And that's that men can be described as patriarchal seed spreaders. All right. To just kind of paraphrase, meaning that they are driven to mate with a variety of women, regardless of the genetic quality of those women. All right. Not saying that, that guys don't care about quality at all, but that's not driving their mating preferences all the time. We see that every guy's had sex with a variety of different women, a variety of different levels of quality, depending on where they're at in life. All right. And while also having when men, so the men are driven for variety, regardless of genetic quality, while also having the need to dominate and provide resources and protection to offspring. All right. So whereas women, though, where women are different, women can be described as hypergamous, meaning that they're wanting to mate with the man of perceived best genetic quality while securing resources and protection for herself and those children. So those are two distinctly different things, right? Now, to understand why alpha widows are distinctly a female thing and not a male thing, one has to understand how hypergamy works in the girl's mind and how it shows up psychologically and how it shows up in her relationships. All right. So she essentially sees the guy who is the best that she can do as the only man that she can fully submit her desires to. That man gets all of her. Everyone else, that man might, everyone else after that guy might get some sex and maybe even some desire, but it will always be negotiated and never at her full intensity and submission. So this effectively makes her an alpha widow until a new man replaces the man of her past that she perceived as her best. She may be in a new relationship with guys that she even likes and even desires sexually at times, but she will never have that full desire and submitting to that desire for him. All right. It's that unleashed desire will not be there for a guy that she doesn't see as her best that she's ever been with or ever could be with. And what's worse is that over time, she settles with that guy that she's not fully in desire for, is that she'll grow to resent him for not being the genetic best that she once had. All right. So Chris Rock had it right in his bit when he said the number one reason your woman is pissed the F off is because you ain't her first choice. Okay. That classic, hilarious comedy bit, that whole show, Chris Rock's awesome. Okay. But it's funny because it's true. All right. So, by the way, if you guys are watching, hit the like button. Hopefully, you're subscribed. And of course, throw a super chat in here or there if you got any questions. It just helps the algorithms. It's not me trying to steal your money. Just by throwing some supers, even if it's just a couple bucks, it sends this off to the search engines. And, in fact, I did a pretty controversial show over the weekend. And when I do controversial shows like that, there's always that risk of me continuing to be shadow banned and for YouTube to not push out my material even when search criteria is match and fit. And so I'm finding that with a lot of my videos because I talk about things that are uncomfortable for people to hear sometimes. There is a shadow banning that does go on. So your help and any likes, any comments in the comments section, your subscription, your notification bell, all that stuff helps. I appreciate it. Any supers, they all help those things. And I'll look at those supers here in a minute. Okay. So now, in fact, actually, what we'll do, we'll take a quick break because the next thing I'm going to talk about here is cucking. All right. And we're going to talk about where that fits in. But first, a little word from my sponsors. Will be back here. My sponsors, myself, and a couple things. Will be back in about a minute. Let's face it, if you're a man, then you are probably dealing with problems and challenges with women. Now, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. Your success with women literally boils down to one thing. bad news is, if you don't have it, nothing else will work. All of the money, good looks, and all of the best pickup and game skills out there will fail without you mastering this one thing. And that one thing is frame. The answers to ending your pain and suffering and to start living an amazing life with women is just one click away. Click the link and let's get started. Are you tired of your face being weak and beta and everyone always wanting to punch it? Well, there's not much I can do about that, but maybe Chad's Facescub can help. It has been crafted for men with all natural ingredients and without the nasty testosterone disrupting chemicals that will eventually turn you into a little man girl. So, whether you need to take a punch or steal someone's girlfriend, or just stay fresh as you go through the rigors of daily life as a man, Chad's is your brand. Order from my link in the video description to help support the channel. All right, there's your little sponsorships. Thank you, Glenn. Hi, Alpha Glenn with my biceps. Appreciate it, Glenn. Mind Dates is the movie that Glenn is working on. And yeah, I thought I saw something with you and Savo doing something, and I know he's doing movie stuff and an NFT stuff with Rolo. So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. If you link up with those guys, because but we'll talk later about all that stuff. I mean, I think it's good to get some entertainment out there that's a little alternative than the mainstream, if you know what I'm saying. But anyways, back to the thing. So I'm asking a question. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. All right. So the one product to answer this. No, I didn't make Chad's Facescub. I was approached by the person who did. I held it for a while because I'm very careful about any sort of sponsorships. I don't want to sponsor something I don't like or don't believe in, right? But I really like the stuff that I was using on the Chad's thing. It's been pretty good. It's been part of my skin routine. I actually need to get some more of it. And then Rich Cooper over at Entrepreneurs is like, hey man, like, what are you thinking about this stuff? He's doing his sponsorship and he approached me on doing it. And the guy seems like a cool dude. And so we're just helping him out and doing it, and there's a small little, a little percentage. I don't know how much it is, like 10% or something like that I get if you order it from my link in the description. And it's something good. It's part of a good skin routine. If you're 20 years old, you're probably not thinking about that. But me in my 40s is something that I definitely think about is like, okay, time to make sure that, I'm taking care of myself and my skin and all that crap as I age, right? Something you think about. So that's the Chads I didn't make. No, it's just me getting a sponsorship. I've had a lot of people approach me about sponsorships. And I've held off on those because I have to really believe in what I'm doing in order to accept it. I did have a rifle going for a while. You can send an email out to Chris. It's on my website. If it's just a custom rifle with a company, Next Level Arms, that makes a really good AR-15. That's a small thing. I don't really take anything from that though. I was actually just helping those guys out, again, believing in the product. The frame course, however, is mine. That's the thing where you sidestep all this bull crap in the sexual marketplace that causes you guys harm and problems, right? I work with you for a year at a pretty intense level, and that price is going to go up. Haven't announced when that's going to be, but I'm going to do a 5-day countdown, and then I'm into the next part of the year, and price is going to go up. So I'm going to offer that for those guys that want to get in on it before the increase, because there's a number of other benefits from adding to the membership as well. So anyway, back to the topic here. We talked about, you guys understand why alpha widowing, okay? It's rooted in hypergamy, all right? It's not rooted in, and that's why only women can be alpha widowed, because it's not the way that men think. And I'll get into that in a minute. But this does tie into also cucking psychology, all right? So kind of a different topic, but it ties in and also points out to why men can't cuck, all right, women, but women always, capital A, always cuck men. Now, before you have a knee-jerk reaction to that, especially if you're a woman or a guy who, doesn't want to think that might be true, hear me out, all right, before you freak out. And it's not a criticism on women. It's just me explaining and demonstrating how things are based on what we know from evolutionary psychology in human instincts. So when I say cucking, let's define what that means. By definition, it's receiving sexual pleasure or excitement from the fantasy or the reality when acted out of being with one man that she perceives as better than another. Okay. That's a basic definition. It's being with one dude and you're perceiving this dude better than another dude, and that is increasing your sexual excitement. All right. As a woman, that's what they're experiencing. This is rooted in hypergamy as well. All right. And rooted into the alpha widow topic. So classic cuckoldry, like taking it back to like Shakespeare, right? Where it's talked about, I remember talked about in reading Shakespeare in high school and stuff. And then even prior to that, classic cuckoldry in that definition is a woman impregnating herself with another man's seed, and then having that lesser genetic male or beta male provision for the child. And there's entire, plays and stuff written by Shakespeare that surround the idea of cuckoldry. So this idea has been around for a while, but the psychology of it is simply not necessarily rooted. It's just rooted in the sexual desire piece, not necessarily, for the express purpose of having another man's child. And so a woman cucks every man she could ever be with or has been with for the man that she perceives as her best. All right. So let me say that again. A woman cucks every man that she has ever been with and every man she ever could be with, or all of her other options. All right. When she is with a man that she perceives as her best. All right. And that's best in the desire and pleasure she gets from him. All right. So the desire she gets from that guy that she sees as her best is in part due to her seeing the other men as less sexually viable options. Okay. They're less good for her in bed, less good for her emotionally, less good for that sexual draw she has to her apex alpha. And yes, it is rooted in sex. And I see some questions in the chat. Throw it in a super chat, or else I may not get to answering those. All right. Just saying, because I don't have limited time here on the stream today. Now, the essence of the cuck fantasy, as we see in kink fetishes and in porn, for a woman, okay, the essence of her part of it is being able to degrade and have power over a current partner, right, that she in favor of a genetically more powerful male or sexually more powerful male or bull. All right. So the kink is related to this psychology, and the psychology is something that all women have an experience, whether they admit it, know it, say it or not, whether they're aware of it or not aware of it. It really doesn't matter. It's part of hypergamy. This is why social proof works in game. This is why she looks to how other people perceive the man she's with as a basis for her determining or deciding her attraction or desire for that man, and whether or not he's a good partner for a number of different reasons, not just good sexual partner, but anything else as well. Okay. She needs to base her emotions and feelings on what others perceive and say, because women are more socially influenced than men are. All right. And so they have to perceive somebody, or the person that they're choosing, is better than the rest of them. So she has to rationalize that somehow. And so in some ways, whether she's overtly thinking about it all the time or not, she is either cucking all those other guys, meaning seeing them as less sexually viable, and that increases her desire and increases her sexual intensity with the guy she's with, or she's fantasizing about those other guys, and that's decreasing her desire and decreasing the intensity of the guy she's with. So it's one or the other. All right. Now, she gets very aroused and turns on by these experiences, the ones that actually act out the fantasy. But the average women don't act out the kink fantasy, but they may never actually act it out, but they're still turned on by the experience. So the average woman, it might be dreaming about, let's say, that guy from work, or that alpha guy that made eyes at her at the gas station. and dreaming about how those guys might please her in ways that her boyfriend or husband couldn't. Or maybe she's closing her eyes and when she's, getting towards orgasm and thinking about, all the ways that an ex could please her and then used to please her and the buttons he used to press in intimacy while she's with her current partner. All right. Now, it's not to say all women who close their eyes during sex are thinking about somebody else. So please do not be a binary artistic thinker here. Okay. But these things do happen. Women report this in large, experiencing this all the time because, and this is what happens when they're not with the person that they perceive as their best. When they perceive the person that they're with is not their sexual best, they will fantasize and dream about other men and them being able to do what he cannot, or being able to do things better than what he can do. So even if they're not actually cheating, right, or actually doing the kink, they've been alpha widowed. Okay, so they're perceiving and thinking about these other things. All right, this is what happens. Now, her arousal and pleasure in these circumstances is predicated on degrading the man that she's in a relationship with. So the pleasure in the cuck fantasy is predicated on degrading that guy she's in a relationship overtly in like the kink scenario, but even in her mind, she's receiving pleasure and elevated pleasure through just doing it through fantasy. Okay, whether she's on her own or actually in the bedroom. And there's statistics on lots of women, very high percentage of women think about other men when they're with their husbands or partners they've settled with. This doesn't happen when she's, with the guy she sees as her apex alpha. This does happen when she's either been alpha widowed or has been through so many notches that her pair bonding abilities, like call it pair bonding, but that's a misnomer. Just the neurological bonding abilities have been compromised through such a large variety of experiences. So, and in men will tell you, okay, guys who have been on the receiving end of being the bull for women, the bull or that alpha cheating partner, even in a sense, just in the cheating sense, will tell you about stories about how these women often talk in comparison and giggle at their committed partner's sexual weaknesses and shortcomings. All right. Either before, after, and even sometimes during the act of intensely receiving sexual release from the cheating partner, new guy, or cuck fantasy guy. So this is what happens. Okay. Women do this all the time. Or when she runs into that ex, okay, let's say she runs into that ex at that restaurant or bar or, on the street somewhere, whatever. She can't help but have either satisfaction running through her mind that her current boyfriend does her better than he used to, and be happy with her current choices, or it's the other way around. Okay. And she sees her current boyfriend as maybe not the best choice. And then she'll pander to that ex and inside her mind wish things were different. You guys have all seen this before. This is where it comes from. This is cucking psychology. Okay. A woman's satisfaction with her partners or dissatisfaction is based in cucking in this sense. Okay. Somebody, one way or the other, is getting it. Okay. Now, men do not do this. Men don't do this. Men may cheat. Men can cheat on their partners, but that's usually due to seed spreading instincts and simply the desire for somebody different. Okay. That's why men do it, because we want to spread seed. It's totally regardless of the sexual desirability of their partner or the other person. Like men cheat all the time with girls that are not as hot or not as good as their current partners just variety, just whatever. All right. It's just because of that mating instinctual drive that gets allowed to play itself out when it shouldn't. And it's not to say either that men under certain circumstances don't disrespect or degrade their partners sexually, or it's not to say that men don't choose somebody hotter or better to cheat with. They do that all the time too. It's just to say that those kinds of behaviors are not cucking by definition, because it is an impossibility for a man to cuckold a female, which means, to seek out it's impossible for a man to seek a genetically better sexual partner and to fool her provisioning partner for caring for a child that's not hers, right? That's not something he's capable of doing because he doesn't get pregnant. Therefore, even and he's not hypergamous. So he's not basing his mating decisions, as a major factor who's genetically the best and who's the best deal. Okay. So for him, for the guy that cheats or maybe does any of these things, which aren't necessarily good things, right? But it's not necessarily cucking. So cucking is based in hypergamy and all women do it. The key is if you're with her and it's something you're invested in, you want to make sure that it's not you that's being cucked. Okay. And if women are alpha widowed, and they're all alpha widowed. If they've had one partner, okay, they're alpha widowed. Now, you just want to make sure that you're the person who's the apex alpha and who's essentially alpha widowing them in your relationship and not where somebody else is. All right. Now, there are nuances to hypergamy and cuck psychology and how these things may or may not show up. So don't think that general theory, okay, these are general theories, although they're true, is the explanation and answer to every relationship problem that ever comes out. Because people, of course, are complex and there are multiple variables with human beings, okay? But this is just the gist of these theories so you understand it. Now, back to alpha widowing. Male neurochemical bonding is not perceived, is not based, male neurochemical bonding isn't based on perceiving her as a genetic best for offspring. All right. So males can't become alpha widowed. Now, men can have what we call, though, in slang terms, Oneitis. That gets confused as an alpha widowing situation, but let's explain and break down as to why that's different. Right. So in Oneitis, by the way, we can term that as an unhealthy attachment to a woman what makes it unhealthy is that woman often doesn't value him as much as he values her. All right. So essentially, so men can get hung up on exes and get hung up on chicks. All right. That's not the same as alpha widowing. It's not due to hypergamy. It's due to a neurochemical bond. All right. That is not because necessarily either he sees, and how do we know this? It's because it's not necessarily because he sees that X as better. Sometimes he does see the X as better, okay? But a lot of times he doesn't. And in fact, I've had many men say in sessions with me when they're trying to break an unhealthy attachment, like they're just baffled because they're like, I know there are better girls out there. Or they're with another girl and they're like, I know my girlfriend is better than her in every way. I'm even more, she's more attractive, this and that. But he can't explain why he's just hung up on this person. So that is that Oneitis thing. That's the unhealthy attachment. And it's not predicated on her genetically being his best choice. Sometimes she is, sometimes he isn't. All right. So that's the thing about that. He may rationalize that she's probably the one for him and all this. That's the magical thinking of Oneitis, but that's not, again, always due to her being the genetically best choice. And in fact, guys get married, what we call marriage goggles in the marriage or a long-term relationship, whereas they'll see this girl that he has a neurochemical attachment to as prettier, better, all this stuff than other women, when objectively, we can put it up to objective measures, it's not objectively true. Other people's opinions would be different, but he has those goggles and he sees her as the best due to that neurochemical attachment, right? Happens to guys all the time. And that's a good thing, by the way. If you're in an LTR and it's a healthy relationship, you should have your goggles for your LTR. All right. But that doesn't, you don't want that, obviously, if it's an unhealthy relationship or if you need to be breaking that neurochemical attachment. But that neurochemical attachment or that investment in the guy is not the same as hypergamy, even though that they're often confused by people who don't understand these concepts. Okay. Because that man will find himself emotionally invested regardless of other women he might even be with or moving on. And he will want to seek genuine desire for that Oneitis that he had. Even if he knows she's not the best he could do. All right. And that's the difference. So yeah, men absolutely can get hung up on a chick, but it's not the same as being alpha widowed, because being hung up has more to do with that addiction to the neurochemical bonding, which is independent for him as him seeing her as as the best. And this neurochemical bonding is why men can settle also with a genetically less attractive woman. We see it all the time. And he's happy. He just loves her and he's content. And that's the way it is for him. And he's not looking backwards at this supermodel or this person or that he used to be with one time in his life. That's not how he thinks, where women do think that way. That's the unfortunate side of hypergamy that women are sort of cursed with. Men are not cursed with this, okay? And you see men do this all the time, right? They just love their wives and it doesn't matter about, and they genuinely mean it. And where women will say that, but then you will notice her behaviors not demonstrating the level of desire that she's had for men that she's been more sexually into. And that's where those things just don't match all the time if that guy's not perceived as an apex alpha. All right. Now, women are never really content. All right. And this just has to do with their general drive for variety and a need for change as a survival marker. And that's okay. But what they will maintain is a high desire and emotion for a man that they see as her apex alpha. Even when she goes through periods of discontent and needs change in her life, that alpha man is the one she has or would have, that alpha man that she would have or does give herself completely to will remain that one true consistent force for her, even when the rest of her life seems to be inconsistent. Okay. And whether that's looking at that as in the fantasy of that guy in hopes for meeting that guy in the future, for a lot of young girls, that's the prince fantasy, right? Or whether it's in reality with the man that she's partnered up with, or whether it was a man that she lost in a past relationship. That guy is the point of origin, all right? And the consistency where everything else is not consistent. And then there's the women who give up on the dream of being with the best man she could ever be with. And those are women who have effectively given up and are just trying to settle with something, whether it's someone or whether it's being alone and being the cat lady, whatever. And they're just trying to find happiness and not being overtaken by depression, anxiety, and those sorts of things. And that's where we're at. So, yeah. So the key is, guys, and I'll go back into your comments here. All right. Now, if you guys got questions, I see one super chat. So I'm not necessarily going to go through all your questions here. But hopefully you guys get it. Let's see if there's anything pertinent I could say. I think, yeah, so this is true. That it gets confused. We confuse, he's been alpha widowed. No, he's not alpha widowed, because alpha widow by definition, it requires hypergamy. So it's not really what it is. But it's, as you said, blue pill unplugged guy, you're correct. It's just because he had that Oneitis and he had that, that neurochemical bond and that got him hung up. But it's not the same, though, because it's not predicated in her being a genetic best option. All right. Whereas for women, that's what it's predicated it too. Let's go through. What do we got? No, Ernesto, it's a great question. No. Because see, and this is where, when I say that, I mean, she could have resolved and overcome a guy that she was hung up on. But at the end of the day, she has to, and she may have to do that if she's trauma bonded, let's say, with in abusive relationships and situations like that, or if she just hasn't, overcome a past relationship, just like how guys need to do that. Women do need to do that. But here's the thing. If the guy that she's with can't make her have the feelings of her perceiving that would cause her to perceive him as the genetic best option, then she's still going to look backwards at that guy being the best. Whether she does it overtly and consciously, or whether she's just unexcited about the guy she's with, which is how it often shows up. Because women will argue with me all the time. I don't think about my ex. A lot of them do, and then just lying. But then some of them, yeah, they're not necessarily thinking about an ex or whatever, but they're just not happy with the guy they're with. They've settled with somebody and they're not happy with what they settled with. And that's how it shows up. And there's nothing wrong with the guy either. It's not like the guy has things that he needs to fix and change and all that stuff. The guy's the same guy that she was pretty excited about in the beginning, and then she's just not excited about him anymore. Now, there's things that guy, of course, can do. It's not just a black and white thing. You can do stuff. In fact, all this stuff is up to her subjective brain and how she perceives things, which is great. Okay. For us men, that means if you have seduction skills and frame skills, what can you do? You overcome all this stuff. All right. You maximize your SMV, sure. But your SMV is not the only thing that determines whether she sees you as the genetic best option or not. In fact, you could be genetically inferior in every way than a guy that she's been with in her past and still be perceived as that apex alpha in her life because of what you do, all right, and how you are and how you show up. Not so much because, you know, of how muscular you are, how taller you are, how much money you have, or any of that stuff. It's literally up in here. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and, look at, cases of cult leaders, like, for example, Charles Manson, stuff like that. My Frame series that's for free. And I go over, if you don't understand Frame, go over there, watch the Frame series. And then if you want to actually learn how to do it, get in my mastermind group. But I use Charles Manson as an example, not because I want guys to be like that guy, but because he was a 5'3", wiry, dorky, a socially awkward person. Yet he had these women, by and large, doing whatever he wanted and perceiving him in a godlike fashion as their best. And these women were not just all borderline personality disorder chicks or something. There were certain psychological vulnerabilities they had for sure, but they came from all different backgrounds all over the spectrum. And then you're going to find that when you start doing some research on, abusive relationships, cult leaders, stuff like that. Never be that guy, of course, but looking into that stuff, you see that the women that fall into these things are all over the map in terms of their psychological makeups and backgrounds. So alpha widowing, it really is just the person that she perceives as the best. And if you can't overcome that and be that person, she's always going to perceive that. It doesn't matter if she's, resolved in the breakup and mourned the past guy. It's not like she mourns the past guy and now it's a blank open slate. You know what I mean? It's not how it works. And with guys, it's confusing. Our own solipsism will get us in trouble because for guys, it is that. For guys, we can start with a blank slate. It's a blessing we have. And then new girls, new experiences, and we're just happy because we've disassociated from the past relationship. Women can disassociate from that past relationship, but then still there's going to be a comparison that she has going on in her mind. And if her only points of comparisons is like this past guy as being that best, guess what? That's the comparison until she's overcome by this. And this is why I did that video on talking about statutory rape and how harmful that is. And in some ways, more harmful than, violent sexual kinds of assault and stuff, psychologically, of course. I mean, it's hard to say because they're both really bad, so it's like, what's worse, this torture or that torture, like this way of dying or that way of dying. I mean, they're all bad, of course. I don't mean to disregard any victims of either of them, but the statutory, we'll say grape for the algorithm, so I don't get myself in trouble. But the statutory situations where that 22-year-old dirtbag is like getting with the 15-year-old girl, like that can be catastrophic to her development and her perceptions of men from that experience forward. She may never be able to overcome it because even if she doesn't like necessarily orgasm or have great sexual experiences with him, and even if that guy is kind of a douche, she's a kid still and emotionally immature and thinks she's an adult. Her reproductive areas are, adult, but her brain is still formulating and she's not considered emotionally mature yet. And yet now this dude is an adult. The power differential is so great that it destroys. She can't have an adult situation, even with a more dominant guy, where that power differential is not so great, or is greater than what she experienced rather than when she was 15. So she could be with super alpha, let's say when she's 30, but that guy's an adult. She's an adult. They're both emotionally mature. Here's the power differential. Okay. So by experience, she perceived that dirtbag that she was with as being the greater experience. and she'll never admit it to herself. She won't be self-aware. It's hard. Some girls may, through therapy, get a light bulb to go on, but girls up and down, they don't want to know that they're doomed, possibly. They don't want to face reality. So they're going to just have instead cognitive dissonance and tell themselves stories and BS and lie to themselves. And that's what they'll do, unfortunately. But they've been completely damaged, and they're unable to really have a strong bonding experience where they can fully surrender to a relationship with a guy that's the best she could do. And that's unfortunate. And that's why those situations are so damaging. So no, once that happens, the only way of overcoming it is that guy has to create, bigger, better, greater, more intense experiences. And she experiences and feels that he's just that best option and better than all these other things and all these guys. And then going deeper into that framework with that guy, okay, and deeper into the frame of the relationship, through the things that we doing in the, in the frame seduction, mastermind group, as you know. All right. That's how those things, that's how a girl overcomes it. But sometimes, I mean, it's hard to say, how can she overcome it? Can she not overcome it? I don't know. When it comes down to individuals, there's too many variables, right? So I can't say that she can't ever, because women overcome these things all the time, but then also women don't overcome these things all the time, right? So we just have to look at it objectively. But what you want to look at, you're not going to get any certainty here. When you start going down the rabbit hole, you don't have certainty. What you have is evidence and data and skills. More importantly, you have skills. And it's your skills that are going to allow you to make the best choices, or going to cause you to not make the best choices and then suffer the consequences. All right. So that's why learning the skills is of most importance. That's why I do courses, consults, and all that stuff. It's to get you those skills. All right. Let's go and see. Do we have any other things? Cool. Thanks for thinking it's good stuff. I appreciate it. Let's see. What's this one now here? Hence male concern with body count, because if she had a man previously, then you're already second best in some area or another, probably many areas. Well, you can't assume that you already are. And in fact, that's another thing. It's a great point you're making. This is why guys are concerned with body count. It's not just alpha widowing, though, by the way, either. It's also the intensity of the neurochemical reaction. All right. So there's some evidence to show that if a girl's been through, 20, 30, 50 guys, that she's not having as intense of a oxytocin bond or a dopamine reaction for the sex than she would have if she only had a few guys. That new partner is going to struggle to create that intense experience for her. And it may not be because another guy was better. It may just be because, she's been dulled essentially through all these experiences. And if there's trauma associated with those experiences, then she'll disassociate sexually from those other parts of her mind and her emotions. And that creates all kinds of stuff. And for you as a man, what does that result in? That results in a lack of emotional buy-in to be in this relationship. That's where she is quicker to be dissatisfied, quicker to devalue you, discard you. I mean, there's no question a girl who's been with 25 guys is much quicker to devalue and discard you than a girl who's been with 4 people. There's just no question in that. Just a question as to whether you want to deal with that or not, because it's not notch count that's the only factor. All right. But it is one that we need to recognize as a factor. Now, you may, of course, have great intense experiences and have frame, and she could have been with, 25 dudes or whatever. And guess what? You're the best dude. It doesn't matter. And then in some ways, now there is no confusion in her mind because she's had so many experiences that she knows you're the best. So there's some ways that I would say a bad thing, okay, which is high notches, can work to your advantage. You can always take something bad and make it to work to your advantage, almost always. So keep that in mind. And this is why game is so important. So don't get discouraged, right? Just get skilled. And I'll say that again. That's a quotable quote right there. Don't get discouraged about how the way things are with women nowadays. Just get better skills. Because when you have better skills, you can turn these things that aren't so good into your advantage, actually. All right. That's what guys are doing all the time. I'm helping guys with that a lot. So that's the thing. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay. That it's not a death sentence, but you're right. It is a concern. Okay. Let's see here. And whoa, there's a lot more comments there. Okay. Well, I got to go. Yeah, I gotta go. That's it, man. That's it. So great cast today. Thanks again. And until next time.